Hi, and welcome back to Small Caps. My name is Jess Fertig, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Tim Laneyrie, who is the CEO of Mitre Mining Corporation. Hi, Tim. It's lovely to have you on the show.
Right, thank you.
So, Tim, before we get started, would you mind please providing our Small Caps audience, who might not be familiar with the company, just a brief overview of Mitre Mining and also your projects?
Sure. Mitre Mining is a relatively new company, only being 3 years old. We have a solid board and management in place at the moment. So a lot of familiar faces in Steve Parsons, Michael Naylor as consultants, Dave Southam is on the board of directors, and Ray Shorey. So a lot of names that have been with the group and the various companies in the group through Bellevue, Firefly, and now Mitre. Mitre Mining itself is a new company to our group. We've only been involved for the previous year. In that time, in the past 6 months, we've just acquired a silver gold project in southern Chile region called the Cerro Bayo project, which is our primary asset. The location of that is in the Patagonia region, about 2,000 kilometers south of Santiago.
Oh, fantastic, Tim. Now, so you mentioned gold and silver projects. Can you explain to our Small Caps audience why silver specifically?
So we reviewed all the commodities that we wanted Mitre to be involved in when we first came involved about a year ago. And really quickly, we identified silver as one of the main commodities that's going to be critical going forward. So the reason we identified silver is that all the major producers are in declining production at the moment, and there's an increasing demand and a current deficit of about 250 million ounces between what's produced and what is actually used. This has been masked by vault stocks coming from around the world. In about 5 years' time, these vault stocks will run out, and the silver bulls are expecting silver to increase rapidly in price.
That's so interesting. I think the silver bulls have been waiting for a couple of years now, but I think time is imminent.
Yeah, definitely imminent.
So, Tim, Canaccord recently initiated research on the company as it sees significant potential upside at Cerro Bayo, your project in Chile. How does the existing infrastructure and the project's current status benefit Mitre going forward, do you think?
Okay, so this is that in-between project. So the project has a long history. It's been going since the early 90s, previously owned by Core Mining and Mandalay Resources. So the project itself has a mill that's on warm idle, so its current capacity of 500,000 tonnes per annum. We have permitted tailings dams, waste dumps. We're about 10 minutes from a 3,000 person town that has all the skilled workforce that was previously operating the mine. These will allow us to actually restart the project quicker than a traditional greenfields project. On top of that, the environmental permits that were originally put in place are still active over the entire site. So that saves us a good chunk of time and fast tracking what we have.
Okay, fantastic. So you can fast track the project. But in addition to that, you've had discovery of quite high-grade mineralization as well with the project. So does Mitre have any sort of specific plans to expand exploration drilling at Cerro Bayo?
Yeah, we have. So, I mean, in all projects, you'd love to have as many rigs as possible. But right now, we have 2 rigs currently drilling on the ground. We've stated in previous announcements, we have a rig currently drilling out Picasso 7 project to try and produce a maiden resource there. We also have a second rig that's just come to site this month, which we're just drilling out brand new Cristal discovery a kilometre from our processing plant. So going forward in the future, there'll be a combination of both brownfields resources. So this project has about 750,000 meters of drilling historically put into it. So a good base data to start from. So with those brownfields resources, the combination of infill expansion and on top of that, greenfields targeting as well. The bulk of the drill permitting of these platforms that we're currently doing will allow us 2, 3, 4, 5 years worth of drilling without having to look at any other further drilling platforms. So we're putting all those platforms in place now for the future.
That's fantastic. Now, you have 300 square kilometers of tenure, at Cerro Bayo, and you have 100% ownership, in this very vast mining district. How will Mitre prioritize the exploration efforts across this very sort of district scale type of project?
Yeah. Well, I mean, with so many targets, it's difficult to pick a favorite as there is so many. But our initial focus is going to be based on resource delineation and building that JORC resource. So these projects have existed for 30 years when metal prices were so much different. So we have that upfront drilling that we can bring a lot of base resources into the JORC. So drilling initially focus on that. Second focus is going to be brownfields expansions to build up the resource, which will then feed into future studies. Then the third focus, once our permitting in place, is going to be pumping greenfields exploration with multiple rigs on the ground at any one time. I said, we have so many targets, you could easily put a dozen rigs on the ground at each one of these areas and come up with good results. But we're ranking them on the prospect fertility, which is our exploration team is currently working on constantly on the ground.
Yeah, so talking about that in terms of like drill planning and your resource exploration team on the ground, I note that Canaccord highlighted Mitre's very strong cash position in the research note. Will the company on that basis, consider deploying more or additional drill rigs to site to accelerate the resource definition that you're talking about?
Yes, definitely. And it's all going to be doing based on the planning and the permits that we have in place and the correct targets. So we're not going to just rush a dozen rigs to site and throw them all over the place. We're doing that solid work up front to identify the highest priority targets, ranking these targets, and then bring drill rigs in on a staggered basis, so we don't overwhelm our facilities on the ground, our teams on the ground at any one time. But yes, we do have plans to deploy additional drill rigs when the time is right and based around those large macro directions of the project itself and key timeframes that are required to be met.
Yeah, that sounds great, Tim. And now, so beyond Canaccord's sort of base case, what production scenarios, so sort of looking at a visionary aspect beyond exploration, what production scenarios is Mitre considering based on potential resource growth?
Okay. So as I say before, we have a mill that's on warm idle that can be turned on very quickly. Tails capacity already there and waste time capacity. So we can do 500,000 tonnes at the moment. And it might not seem much, but when Core Mining had this project in the 90s to early 2000s, they were producing 110,000 ounces gold equivalent per annum out of this mill. So extremely high grade material. But saying that, we're not going to be stuck on 500,000 tonnes. We're going to right size that mill and the infrastructure to what the resource growth and exploration teams find on the ground. So whether that's 500,000, 750,000, or 1 million tonnes per annum plus, our infrastructure will be right side of that. So just an example to be relevant in this industry for a mid to large tier company, prime example would be one that's just started production of Aya Gold and Silver, single asset company in Morocco, producing 7.5 million ounces silver, all in sustaining cost of US $10 an ounce, which is the lowest quartile in the world. And they're currently valued at $1.4 billion. So that would be to be relevant in this industry.
Yeah, that's an amazing company to me. I actually follow them quite closely. I know the CEO, Benoit. Yeah, fascinating. And that's a very good base case, one that investors should look out for. Given high gold and silver prices that we have now, how will Mitre optimize production strategy to maximize project profitability?
Okay, well, given the high gold and silver price and the anticipated silver breakout, if you go on some bulls of $200 an ounce US, which would be an excellent price target, we're going to have the future flexibility that previous operators were lacking. So with low silver gold prices, Core was stuck on a 7+ gram cutoff grade. Current prices and mining, we can drop that a lot lower. Mandalay had mine constraints where they were just trying to chase underground without using the open pit material to build up the resource base. Saying that, they were making extremely good money at the time as well. So we aim to utilize a balanced blending strategy that will encompass both open pit base load in our Tatao open pit, plus other areas of high-grade underground feeds to achieve the targets. So this will ensure that you're not putting too much production pressures on any one area and allow levers to be pulled to adjust that schedule at times that are right. With significant increase in the silver price, it also then opens up opportunities that were previously missed. So as I said, core mining, we're mining a 7 gram cutoff. Right now, you can mine a silver open pit down to 30, 40 grams per tonne. So a lot of the waste and min waste that they were mining and just putting in stockpiles then becomes relevant because the grades of those are well and truly in excess of those. So there are other options that come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, Tim, obviously you've spoken about sort of the district scale nature of the project, multiple, drill targets and priorities, cash in the bank. Canacor's just initiated research, and you're in the right commodity at the right time, or the right commodities at the right time.
Yeah.
But I don't want to steal your thunder. But could you please provide our small caps audience with just 2 or 3 key investment takeaways of Mitre as to why they should have the company on their stock watch list?
Sure. So I think one of the key is we have the right team in place, both board, management, and on-ground teams who have done this many times before to achieve the project goals. As I said, we have the founders of Bellevue, we have the founders of Firefly Metals on there assisting. We're also well endowed district and really underexplored. A lot of these areas haven't been touched for 15, 20 years. We're also well capitalized, and at the previous records with previous operators, as I said, with Bellevue and Firefly, we're not afraid to use that capital to grow the resource. So I think those are our 3 key points.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Tim. Heaps of progress. Congratulations on having the company being initiated or having research initiated on the company. That's always such a huge win and sort of is de-risks the company to a certain extent because more investors are sort of looking at it as well as the brokers and the research. So really looking forward to having you back on the show to hear more about how your drill results come in as your exploration efforts continue and progress.
No, thank you for having me.